so the minute I could drive, and I think I even just had a learner's permit, I'm pretty sure I couldn't even drive like 15 and a half. Like we were getting in the car. I always had some shitty car, and that was a priority to me. Like I worked so that I could have some kind of car, and as many kids as I could squeeze into the car at once. And we'd come to Berkeley, we'd go to Gilman Street, we'd hang out on University Avenue, we would do all of that, but then come into the city and look for gay people.
That was Marcy Coburn, Creative and Marketing Senior Director at San Francisco's Pier 70. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. In this episode, Marcy shares her life story. She was born and raised in Visalia in the Central Valley. Her mom was the descendant of Oklahoma migrants, and her dad moved to California from Florida. The two met while attending Cal Poly Pomona near LA and raised their family in the valley. Marcy talks about not fitting in Visalia. When her parents split and she lived with her mom, they ended up in Stockton, where Macy's experiments with neon and dabbling in punk played better. By the time she was old enough to drive, she and her friends came to the Bay Area as often as they could. And then, after high school, Marcy's path to San Francisco took a slight but important detour. Here's Marcy.
My mother's family was, they were sharecroppers in Oklahoma, and the family came out after the Oklahoma Dust Bowl. So I'm 4th or 5th generation Californian.
Okay. They were Okies.
They were Okies.
Okay.
Yeah, which was a bad word. My grandmother was very, very against that word.
I'm sorry, I'll strike that from
No,
it.
it's okay. It's okay. She's long dead. But she actually, when I was a kid, I was reading Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck's amazing book, and she was like furious that they had assigned it in school and hated it and really resented it because it was the story
derogatory.
of her life. Yeah. And she saw it as derogatory. I mean, it's
Right.
an astounding story, but yeah. So my family settled in the Central Valley, and my extended family were farmers.
Okay.
And my parents actually met at Cal Poly Pomona.
Oh, wow.
And then ended up in the Central Valley because that's where my mother's family was. So
Where in the Central Valley did your mom grow up?
so my mother grew up in Ivanhoe, California, and Exeter, Ivanhoe, Farmersville, and then I was born in Visalia, California.
Okay, Visalia
So,
I've heard of.
yeah.
Is that on 99?
Yeah, it's right in the armpit of California.
Yes.
It's like right between Bakersfield and Fresno.
But those other little towns that your mom
And those other little towns
are not on
Yeah.
99.
No, like
Smaller
neither is
roads.
Visalia, but there's a sign that's like an exit to Visalia. It's a
Right.
few miles, 10 miles off of 99.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, like right there by like Kings Canyon and Sequoia National
Yeah,
Parks.
that is one of the gateways to the giant trees, to the big redwoods.
Right,
So a lot of people go through there on the way up to the redwoods, and that's what they know it from, especially from LA. If you're
Right.
coming up to go to the redwoods from LA, you go through Visalia.
Go that way, yeah.
Yeah.
So
But I mean, it was a sweet town. It was a, very, I often say I'm like an honorary Texan because the Central Valley is very conservative, very, very conservative. The guy who led the secessionist movement, or one of them, for California Central Coast, like to secede from the coast. The Central Valley wants to secede from the coast.
Okay.
Yeah, like lived next door to where I grew up. That guy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like very.
I'm glad you went back and said one of the secessionists.
Yeah, because there's a few.
There's so and
there's a
especially
few.
lately.
But, yeah, I mean, but I get it. Like certainly, like growing up around agriculture, like I do want to say that I do understand how sometimes people who live in the Central Valley grow all the food, do all, like a lot of the labor in terms of feeding this state and many other states in the world, in fact, and that they don't reap. It doesn't, it seems like such income disparity between folks who grow the food and those who are like eating it and buying it and enjoying it on the coast, right? So
and different cultures.
Yeah,
I mean,
very different.
Yes. California's a big place, but like,
the
cultures are just
different.
I
mean, Visalia is a deeply immigrant community.
Yeah.
And lots of folks who work on farms and live in various ways on the farm and off the farm, and so it is really interesting, and that actually led me to study agriculture, and I started. So it's kind of a long, weird story, but when I first moved to San Francisco, I worked at Veritable Vegetable.
Oh yeah.
on the night crew. And that was 1994. And I actually eventually graduated to driving a truck for Veritable, and then having a schedule that was like a little less horrendous, which was that I had to be at work at 4 a.m. instead of 10 p.m. and work, the graveyard shift. But it was in that time that I was visiting all kinds of farms all over the state, because I was dropping off and picking up produce from them. And so then I sort of learned about agriculture in the state of California, and my interest really grew in that way. And so I went back to school, got a degree in agricultural journalism.
Okay, wow.
And then,
All this
XYZ.
time, were you thinking, like, this is also kind of where I'm from, like that, it's the world where I'm from.
Yeah. And I thought that I had communication skills and a certain amount of, like, ability to maybe translate, or like some kind of like middle of the aisle kind of role is what I envisioned for myself, where I was like
an interpreter.
I'm from here. I am, whether you like it or not, of those people, not you, but whether they like it or not, I'm from that.
Right.
And then, but I also am like a Bay Area liberal, queer, and I want to live in the Bay Area. And so it's like, how can I help make that connection? Right.
You're like an ambassador.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
We'll get into that later.
Okay.
So wait, let's go back. Actually, you said your parents met at Cal State Pomona.
Cal Poly Pomona.
Poly Pomona. Okay.
Pomona, and my
mother. Is
mother.
that also in the Central Valley?
It's actually, it's Pomona, LA. So down in the LA area.
Got it. Okay.
So my father grew up in Florida. He grew up in really extreme poverty in the middle of Florida, little town called Sebring, which is only known for their racetrack. And some convertibles are named that now, I think, because of the racetrack.
Oh, Sebring, yeah.
There's some car that's named that. Anyway,
Yeah.
He grew up in really intense poverty. His father was a really pretty violent alcoholic, and so he fled the minute he could. And his sister had, Connie, my aunt, had moved out to California, and so he came out here to be with her.
Wow.
And they were young. They were like 18 and 20.
Okay.
And super young. And then
I love those stories. So
I
brave.
know.
I mean...
I know.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also a dramatic difference between Florida and California.
Yes and no, right? I mean, we still have orange trees, I guess.
Right. I would say better oranges. I'm going to go on record.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Here and now. Yes.
Florida orange juice. Why has everyone talked about it? Because I'm like, California's
Marketing.
way better.
Yeah,
We just
marketing.
don't brag about it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah,
So your
they
aunt
met.
and your dad.
Yeah.
What year or at least decade was that
Yeah.
they came out here?
60s. Yeah, early 60s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
An
early
interesting
60s.
time to come to California. Okay.
But my father was not part of the civil rights movement. He was definitely like not. He's a liberal guy actually, but like was not going to drop out and become a hippie and be running around the streets of San Francisco. Like that wasn't his story.
Okay.
I wish it was, in some ways,
Sure.
but it wasn't. But yeah, he met my mom and they settled down in Visalia, immediately had kids, and kind of stumbled through it at that point.
How many? You're one of how many?
So I'm one of two.
Okay.
I have an older brother who actually works in tech in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then my parents were divorced when I was 12. So then my father remarried, and I have 3 stepbrothers from that marriage.
Oh, wow.
And they've been together like 45 years now or something insane.
Interesting.
Like a long
Did you
time.
split time between your mom and dad at that
So
point?
I went
or?
with my mom.
You went
so this
exclusively?
Is,
Okay.
Yeah. So my parents did a weird thing, which is they separated us, the kids, which I think is really strange when I think back to it. I was 12 and my brother was 14.
Huh.
And to be honest, I think I was like, get me out of here. Like, I think I was at a point in my life where I was like, you can't leave me in this small town. I think really, honestly. And so my mom and I moved to Stockton, which is not much better, but is closer to San Francisco, which
Correct.
is very pivotal to the story, which is where I sort of learned and started coming to San Francisco was once I was in Stockton.
Had you left Visalia much to know that there were better places or places that you might like more? Or
That's
what?
so interesting.
Or was it
No.
maybe through pop culture?
Yeah,
or?
maybe. I don't, that's a really good question. I don't know how I had the self-knowledge to know that I was not destined to be in Visalia for my entire life, I'm not sure. Probably reading. I read a ton.
Yeah.
Maybe I can owe it all to Judy Blume or something. I'm not sure. like the New Yorker, you know, I just
yeah.
was like, get me out of here. I knew it. I knew I didn't want to be there.
Okay.
And it's not like my mother really wanted to take me because she was kind of having a midlife crisis, and I think she had a boyfriend. I think she wanted to like go off and do her whatever thing. She was like 38,
I was gonna say.
So different now, right?
An age that used to be like ancient, and now we're like
and
in
she
the
had
rearview
like,
mirror.
Yeah,
what
she
the
had
hell?
a 13-year-old daughter at 38, and so she was like, and I was like, no, I'm going with you
to
like
Stockton.
whether you like it or not.
So you were 13.
Yeah.
Was it at least like, was there anything that was a little sad to leave? Like, did you have friends in Visalia that were like, oh, that kind of sucks, or were you just like, no, get me the hell out of here?
That's so, yeah. I mean, I think I was a little nostalgic, but I was like
is a pretty
halfway through
pivotal.
7th grade, and I think I had been pretty popular in the like little elementary school,
Okay.
but then I got into 7th grade and I like made some fashion mistakes. There was one so this is like 80s, right? All of a sudden, like, neon became very popular, and I went to the store with my mom, and I was like, I'm gonna get neon everything, like neon headband, because I had the hair with the headband, and like sweatshirt and pants and shoes and bag, and I like went to school decked out in all neon.
All the same color, or all different colors
all
of neon?
different colors of neon.
Rainbow
Which
neon.
was like really, really too much for the kids of Visalia. It was like. And then, there was another thing where it was like, I was trying to be punk. I was kind of getting punk. And so I was really into Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And everyone wore like long underwear, like, you know, like leggings under skirts and stuff.
Yep.
And I didn't have like good ones. I didn't have like the sort of like brown stain, cool punk rock, holy ones. I just had like flower ones that were from JCPenney or something. Right. And so I put those on. I wore them under a skirt, and I got like laughed out of the classroom.
In 7th grade?
In 7th grade.
Oh, man.
It was horrible.
That's like, kids can be still pretty shitty.
Oh my God. And so I think I was like, get the fuck out of here. I think it was totally that same thing where I was just like, okay, no, I'm done. My parent, forget it. I'm out. I'm out. But then, you know, I got to Stockton, and it was like a lot cooler than Visalia.
Okay.
So there was that too. The like growing pains of that. Everyone wore Jordache.
Okay.
You know, Guess jeans. I didn't even know what those were. I mean, it was hard.
So maybe did you have like one foot in punk or alternative?
Yeah,
what they became called alternative?
Yeah.
But also Jordache and Guess. That's pretty preppy.
I was really trying. I was like in such
crisis.
a like child like try to figure stuff out. I tried for a while to fit in, and it lasted maybe the rest of 7th grade. Okay. And by 8th grade, I was like, okay, I'm not fitting in. And then it was just like you go the complete other direction.
Were you seeing punk kids already in that junior high?
Yeah, but nerdy, you know, like we weren't cool at all.
Yeah.
It was like super nerdy in punk and theater. I found theater, you know, and my best friend to this day, you know, we're still really close. We met there. And so like, I think it was just like nerdy alternative punk goth phase. We all went through a goth phase. It was like goth and punk, and later we kind of hippied out. Yeah, it was all over the place.
Were there like I'm just thinking of my own, so I'm asking these questions from that point of view. Were there like underage clubs that you're going to maybe a little later, or
a little later,
like 16, 17
once we
or
could
so?
drive.
Right.
Then we definitely did. We went to Gilman Street all the time, which was all ages.
I was just about to ask.
Yeah.
So some people call Stockton the Bay Area. I'm going to say it's not quite.
No.
It's adjacent.
It's adjacent.
But so...
Yeah, so very much like... The minute I could drive, and I think I even just had a learner's permit. I'm pretty sure I couldn't even drive
15.
like 15 and a half. Like we were getting in the car. I always had some shitty car, and that was a priority to me. Like I worked so that I could have some kind of car, and as many kids as I could squeeze into the car at once. And we'd come to Berkeley. We'd go to Gilman Street. We'd hang out on University Avenue. We would do all of that, but then come into the city and look for gay people, which was... I mean, I think it was like we were trying, like we told ourselves it wasn't because we were gay. It was like we were just being allies to the gays.
Okay.
Which is really hilarious now.
Right.
Because we were so gay and we were just didn't know any gay people and wanted to know them and wanted to see them. So we'd literally walk around holding hands, like so it was 2 male friends and 2 female friends, and we would hang out, or me and a female friend, and we would walk around the Castro holding hands with the same sex person of our friend circle. None of us were together, just looking to see if anyone noticed. Like we're walking down the Castro Street, like, oh my God.
Young minds. It's almost charming how like wrong they are all the time, because you're like, of course no one's gonna notice or care in the cast, like of all places.
I know, teenagers.
Like go to the, I don't know, the financial district. Maybe they'd care, but not even then.
I know.
They wouldn't give a shit. Yeah, but I think it's important that it was important to you.
Yeah.
Because it was so different than anything. Yeah.
And we didn't know where to go or where to find people. We're just figuring it out, just winging it.
Do you want to go back real quickly and talk a little bit about Gilman?
Oh, like just what it was like.
When was this, and like what kind of bands were y'all seeing, local and or touring?
I used to see like Green Day there and stuff, like small time, like little, like bands that made it really big later.
When they were on like Lookout record.
Just like that's the biggest one that I can think of. But like a lot of just, a lot of my memories of that time are really like parking lots, like standing outside in the parking lot. Like the bands were important, but it was also like the culture and the being seen, just feeling like a sense of belonging. And we'd go see anything, like lots of ska, lots of punk, lots of whatever, right? Whatever, rockabilly or whatever was happening.
Were you meeting people from here at that point, or?
Mostly not. Mostly at that age, it was just with my friends.
Okay.
And we were, nobody talked to us except other teenagers. It was like
back to the holding hands thing. Yeah.
We could fast forward a little bit. I moved to San Francisco and I got a little more game.
Okay. Well, no, because I was going to ask, was there anything besides those trips into San Francisco to try to be very out? Or Gilman, like, was there anything besides those two things that once it came time for you to make that decision that influenced it? Anything else about your visits?
Not then. It was very straight, actually, the punk scene still.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't very, like, it was important because it was alternative, but it also was like we were still kind of closeted there in that scene. It wasn't until actually the early 90s when I moved to San Francisco officially as an adult, or as a 19-year-old, that kind of had its day, I think, where it was like queercore and queer punk and stuff sort of like
Pansy
happened.
Division, etc.
Happened because up until like the late 80s, early 90s, it was still, I feel like, for me anyway, was still pretty straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably like Ronald Reagan, George Bush.
Might have had some influence.
To thank for all that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All those horrible years. And then it was like, no, fuck this.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we just go back and just like your last couple of years in Stockton, when do you think you figured out? And did you come straight from Stockton to here? Or?
No. So the story goes that so my friends and I, we really podded up, like the use of the pod word now post-pandemic is like got a whole different meaning. But I think it was like there were 4 of us, we all ended up being homosexual, super homosexual, like as fuck, and we're all at the time, closeted and hunkered down in children's theater and like doing shows and things, theater and speech competitions and all those things that you do when you're like artsy kids. And so a couple things happened. We tried to go to community college. My friend Taylor and I dropped out of community college, and at this point I said we had gotten like a little more political and maybe a little more hippie, and so we dropped out of community college and took a Greyhound bus across country and walked across the country on a peace walk in 1992.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, so we left, it took 9 months. We left on January 1st, 1992 from New York City, and then walked for 9 months to the Nevada nuclear test site outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. And at that point, they were still doing underground nuclear testing on Western Shoshone land. And there was a huge protest. And so it was like a protest walk. It was in the 500th year anniversary of Columbus's invasion of the Americas in 1492. And it was there were a bunch of Native people on the walk, and it was all in solidarity. And so we slept in gymnasiums and, in schools and things on the East Coast, and then slowly, as the weather warmed up, started sleeping in parks. And on the side of the road.
Amazing.
I mean, just kind of nuts. And so Taylor and I both like officially came out on the walk across America. So
not in New York, but on the walk?
No, like on the walk. Like once we got to like the New Mexico, I actually hitchhiked with women that I met all these amazing activists, like feminist women on the walk, and we hitchhiked from Arizona or from New Mexico back to Michigan to the Michigan Women's Music Festival.
Oh, yes.
And then, which was still happening at that time. It doesn't happen anymore. But we camped outside the gates and we snuck in, and I got together with a woman for the first time. And it was like literally in a tent. I'm like, okay, like this is...
It was a festival.
It was a festival, and I was in a tent. And then we hitchhiked back to the Walk Across America. And at that point, Taylor had also... and just, I mean, to be a name dropper, but it's Taylor Mack, who's like a famous performance artist, actor, playwright and stuff. So he went on to have this fabulous career in theater. But he also, and he wrote a play about the Walk Across America.
Wow.
But he had also gone in his own walkabout offshoot of the Walk Across America and had his first experience. And so then we came back and we were like, I'm gay, and he's like, I'm gay. And then, and then we moved to San Francisco.
That was Marcy Coburn. On the next episode of Storied San Francisco, Marcy continues her story, including her move to San Francisco and her work at Pier 70. Part 2 drops Thursday. Music for the podcast was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Original photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 4th season, we have more than 150 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you can, subscribe, rate, and review our show so we can reach even more folks. And if you'd like to drop us an old-fashioned email, we'd love that. The address is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.